They were monks, warriors, and bankers, a secretive order so powerful kings owed them money and feared their influence. This is the rise, fall, and enduring mystery of the Knights Templar. For centuries, their name has echoed through the hushed halls of history, whispered in conspiracy theories, hidden in the pages of forgotten texts. Were they the guardians of sacred relics, perhaps even the Holy Grail itself? Or were they heretics, dabbling in dark rituals in the shadows of their grand cathedrals? The whispers persist even now, centuries after their last breath was drawn. Tales of immense, hidden treasure, a clandestine survival, and a secret society that continues their ancient work in the modern world. Their legacy is not just etched in stone, but woven into the very fabric of our myths and legends. To understand the Templars, we must first journey back to the turn of the 12th century. Imagine Jerusalem, the holiest of cities, newly reclaimed by Christian forces after the First Crusade. The air is thick with dust and devotion. Pilgrims from every corner of Christendom brave treacherous journeys across vast lands and perilous seas, their hearts filled with faith, their spirits eager to walk where Christ himself once walked. They seek solace, salvation, and the sacred touch of the Holy Land. But the journey to Jerusalem was not simply long, it was deadly. The roads, winding through desolate plains and rugged mountains, were infested with brigands, desperate men who preyed on the devout. Every shadow held potential danger, every turn in the path a lurking threat. These holy travelers, often unarmed and vulnerable, became easy targets for ambush, robbery, and even murder. The dream of salvation could quickly turn into a nightmare of terror and despair. And so a desperate need arose. Who would protect these vulnerable pilgrims? Who would stand between them and the ever-present danger? It was a unique problem, demanding a unique solution. Not just soldiers, for soldiers fought for kings and conquest. Not just monks, for monks prayed and sought spiritual enlightenment. What was needed was a new breed, a hybrid, men who could wield the sword with divine purpose and kneel in prayer with warrior's resolve, men who would sacrifice worldly possessions for a higher calling and lay down their lives not for earthly glory, but for the sacred duty of safeguarding the innocent on their holy quest. This, then, was the crucible, the moment when an idea, born of necessity and devotion, began to stir in the heart of the Holy Land, the seed from which the legendary Knights Templar would grow. The concept was revolutionary, even audacious. For centuries, the Church had preached that shedding blood, even in self-defense, was an anathema for those consecrated to God. Yet here was a proposal. Monks who would fight, who would kill, not for personal gain or earthly dominion, but for the sacred cause of protecting the pious. It was a paradox, a necessary contradiction born of dire circumstances. Their initial formation was humble, almost insignificant. 9 knights bound by a solemn oath, presenting themselves to King Baldwin II of Jerusalem. Among them a Frenchman named Hugh de Payens, whose vision and unwavering conviction would lay the foundation for one of history's most enigmatic orders. They were a small band with no grand resources, no vast armies at their disposal. Their commitment was their shield, their faith, their sword. King Baldwin, recognizing the dire need, granted them quarters within the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which tradition held to be built upon the ruins of Solomon's Temple. This sacred site, steeped in history and reverence, gave them their enduring name, the Knights of the Temple, the Templars. From these modest beginnings, within the ancient stones of what was once the Temple Mount, their legacy began to take root. They pledged themselves to poverty, chastity, and obedience, like any monastic order, but unlike any other, they added a fourth defining vow: to protect pilgrims and defend the Holy Land, to be the sword arm of God in an age of brutal pilgrimage. For almost a decade, they remained a small, obscure group, their efforts largely unnoticed by the wider Christian world. They lived simply, patrolling dangerous routes, their white mantles still unadorned by the iconic red cross, blending into the dusty landscape of the Levant. They relied on alms and the generosity of the local lords to survive. Their true power, their ultimate influence, lay not in their numbers, but in the unfolding of a strategic alliance, a crucial endorsement that would elevate them from a local guard force to a formidable international power. This pivotal moment arrived in 1129 at the Council of Troyes. It was here, in the heart of France, that the humble Knights of the Temple gained the patronage of one of the most influential figures of their age, Bernard of Clairvaux. Saint Bernard, a Cistercian abbot, was a spiritual titan, his words capable of swaying kings and inspiring armies. He saw in the Templars not just a band of warrior monks, but the very embodiment of Christian chivalry, a divine instrument for the defense of the faith. Bernard passionately championed their cause, lending his immense moral authority to their burgeoning order. He penned a treatise in praise of the new knighthood, a powerful theological justification for their unique dual role as monks and warriors. He argued that their violence, unlike secular warfare, was a holy act, a righteous shedding of blood in the service of God. This endorsement from such a revered figure was nothing short of miraculous. It legitimized their existence, transforming them from a localized curiosity into a recognized, blessed entity within the fabric of the Church. The Council of Troyes officially recognized the Templars as a monastic order, and shortly after, in 1139, Pope Innocent II issued the papal bull Omne Datum Optimum. This document was a true cornerstone of Templar power. It granted them extraordinary privileges, exemption from local ecclesiastical authority, answerable only to the Pope himself. It allowed them to collect taxes in their own name, to build churches and chapels, and to recruit members from all walks of life without interference. They were, in essence, a sovereign entity within the Church, a spiritual army answerable to no earthly king or bishop. This papal bull was a game changer. It transformed the poor, humble band of 9 into a burgeoning, independent force. No longer dependent on local handouts, they could now build their own infrastructure, establish their own commanderies across Europe, and truly begin to fulfill their mission on an unprecedented scale. The white mantles would soon bear the striking red cross, a symbol of their sacrifice and unwavering commitment to the crusading ideal. The stage was set, the foundation laid. From this point forward, the Knights Templar would embark on a trajectory of unparalleled growth, becoming a force that would shape the destiny of nations, amass unimaginable wealth, and ultimately face a downfall so spectacular it would echo through the centuries, leaving behind a legacy of enduring mystery and whispered conspiracy. Their journey from obscure protectors to a global phenomenon had truly begun. The year is 1119. The First Crusade, a wave of fervent religious zeal and brutal conquest, had swept through the Holy Land 2 decades prior, reclaiming Jerusalem for Christendom. But the triumph was precarious, the victory fragile. While the major cities had fallen, the vast stretches of land between them remained dangerous, wild, and unforgiving. Pilgrims, driven by profound faith to visit the sacred sites, still faced an arduous and often deadly journey from the coastal ports to Jerusalem itself. The roads were bandit-ridden, the landscape treacherous, and the local populations, many of whom harbored deep resentment towards the Frankish invaders, posed a constant threat. It was in this volatile landscape that a new, radical idea began to take root in the mind of a French nobleman named Hugh de Payens. A veteran of the First Crusade, Hugh was not just a warrior, he was a man of deep piety, troubled by the vulnerability of the very pilgrims he had fought to liberate. He saw the suffering, the robberies, the murders that plagued the roads, and he recognized a desperate, unmet need. What if there were men, holy men, who would dedicate themselves not to fighting grand battles, but to the humble yet essential task of protecting these unarmed travelers? Hugh de Payens gathered around him 8 other knights, men of similar conviction and unwavering faith. Their names are largely lost to the grand annals of history, overshadowed by the order they would help to found, but their initial commitment was profound. They were Godfrey de Saint-Omer, Payen de Montdidier, Arcambault de Saint-Aignan, Andrew de Montbard, Geoffrey Bizot, Gondemar, and 2 others whose names are disputed by history. A small band, 9 in total, they stood before King Baldwin II of Jerusalem, their proposal simple yet revolutionary. They would vow to live as monks, bound by the traditional monastic rules of poverty, chastity, and obedience. But unlike any monks before them, they would also take up arms, dedicating their lives to the protection of pilgrims. King Baldwin II, along with Warmund, the Patriarch of Jerusalem, immediately recognized the strategic brilliance and urgent necessity of their proposal. The king, himself a former crusader and a pragmatic ruler, understood that securing the pilgrim routes was vital for the continued flow of devout Europeans, whose presence bolstered a fragile Latin kingdom. He granted Hugh and his companions quarters within a wing of the royal palace, a building believed to stand on the ancient ruins of Solomon's temple. This symbolic location, a testament to both Christian reverence and historical depth, would forever link them to the ancient past and give them their enduring name, the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, or more simply, the Knights of the Temple, the Templars. For the next 9 years, from 1119 to 1128, the Templars remained a small, obscure force. They were, in essence, a localized police force for the pilgrim roads. They lived a life of extreme austerity, their numbers few, their resources meager. They relied entirely on donations from local lords and what little they could earn from their protective duties. Accounts from the time speak of their humble existence, sharing a single cloak among 2 knights, their meager meals and their constant vigilance. They were warrior monks in the truest sense, blending rigorous spiritual discipline with the harsh realities of constant patrol and potential combat. Their rule, the code by which they lived, was initially unwritten, based on the Cistercian monastic tradition, known for its strictness and simplicity. They wore simple, undyed robes, usually white, to signify their purity and commitment to God. There was no grand ceremony, no widespread fame, just the quiet, determined dedication of a handful of men attempting to make a dangerous world a little safer for those driven by faith. However, their reputation, though localized, slowly began to spread among the pilgrims they protected and the lords who observed their unwavering commitment. Word of their unusual dedication and effectiveness eventually reached Europe, carried by returning pilgrims and visiting dignitaries. One of the most influential figures to hear of them was Bernard of Clairvaux, the powerful and charismatic Cistercian abbot, whose spiritual authority was almost unmatched in Christendom. Bernard, a passionate advocate for the Crusades and a spiritual reformer, was captivated by the concept of these warrior monks. He saw in them not just a pragmatic solution to a pressing problem, but a new ideal of Christian knighthood, a fusion of piety and martial prowess, dedicated solely to God's will. Their unique existence, a radical departure from traditional monasticism, required official church sanction to thrive. And so, in 1129, a pivotal event took place, the Council of Troyes. This ecclesiastical council, convened in France, was a gathering of bishops, abbots, and prominent nobles. Hugh de Payens himself travelled from the Holy Land to attend, presenting the Templars' case to the assembled dignitaries. It was here that Bernard of Clairvaux became their most ardent champion. He eloquently defended their unique calling, arguing that their violence was a righteous act, a purging of evil rather than a sin. His persuasive arguments, coupled with the clear need for such an order, swayed the council. The Council of Troyes formally recognized the Knights Templar as a religious order, giving them the official blessing of the Church. More significantly, it commissioned Bernard to draft their rule, a comprehensive code of conduct that would govern every aspect of their lives. This rule, heavily influenced by Cistercian discipline, detailed their vows, their hierarchy, their dress code, and their military duties. It formalized their distinctive white habit, symbolizing purity, and famously decreed the addition of a red cross, a potent symbol of martyrdom and the blood of Christ, to be worn over their hearts. Following the council, Pope Honorius II further solidified their position with the papal bull Omne Datum Optimum, every perfect gift, issued in 1139. This bull granted the Templars extraordinary privileges. It declared them exempt from all episcopal jurisdiction, meaning they answered only to the Pope himself. This placed them above the authority of local bishops and kings, granting them unprecedented independence. The bull also allowed them to retain all spoils of war, to collect alms and taxes, and to build their own chapels and cemeteries. It was a charter of immense power, effectively transforming a small, humble group of knights into a powerful, autonomous, and internationally recognized military monastic order. The birth of the order was complete. From 9 dedicated men patrolling dusty roads, they had been transformed into a spiritual army, blessed by the Church, guided by a sacred rule, and endowed with immense authority. This foundation, laid in the crucible of the Holy Land and consecrated by the highest echelons of the Church, would propel them from obscurity to unimaginable wealth and influence, setting the stage for their dramatic rise to power across Europe and the Middle East. Their unique blend of religious devotion and martial might had found its official footing, ready to embark on a journey that would reshape the course of history. with the official sanction of the Church secured at the Council of Troyes and the immense privileges granted by Omne Datum Optimum, the Knights Templar embarked on an astonishing ascent. The decade following 1129 saw their transformation from a small local guard force into a multinational powerhouse, their influence spreading like wildfire across the European continent and solidifying their presence in the Crusader states. The endorsement of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, a man whose spiritual authority resonated deeply throughout Christendom, proved invaluable. His eloquent appeals and written justifications for the unique warrior-monk status spurred a wave of recruitment and donations. Young noblemen, fired by religious zeal and the allure of holy warfare, flocked to join the ranks of the Templars. Joining the order was seen as a path to spiritual salvation, a way to fight for God without forsaking one's soul. These recruits, often bringing with them substantial dowries of land, money, or property, rapidly swelled the Templars' coffers and expanded their territorial holdings. Their distinctive white mantles, emblazoned with a striking red cross, became a familiar and revered sight. This symbol, a powerful representation of martyrdom and divine purpose, inspired awe and respect on the battlefield, and trust and generosity in the cities and towns of Europe. The image of a Templar, a monk devoted to prayer, yet fiercely capable in combat, resonated deeply with the medieval psyche. On the battlefield, the Templars quickly earned a formidable reputation. They became the shock troops of the Crusader armies, often leading the charge in battle and forming the rear guard during retreats. Their training was rigorous, their discipline legendary. Unlike many feudal armies, Templar knights were professional soldiers, living and breathing the art of war every day. They fought with a zeal born of religious conviction, often preferring death to retreat, believing that to die in battle for the faith was a direct path to heaven. This ferocity, combined with their cohesive unit tactics, made them a truly terrifying opponent. Their military innovations were significant. They fought in tight disciplined formations, their heavy cavalry charges designed to break enemy lines. The Templar charge was renowned for its devastating impact, a wall of steel and faith that often turned the tide of battle. They were masters of siege warfare and fortress construction, building and maintaining some of the most impressive and impregnable castles in the Middle East, such as the famous Crac des Chevaliers. Though this was primarily a hospitaller fortress, the Templars built their own formidable strongholds like Saft and Tortosa. These castles served not only as defensive bulwarks, but also as strategic outposts from which to control vital trade routes and maintain order. But the Templars' ascent to power wasn't solely built on a sword. Their most remarkable and arguably most enduring legacy lay in their astonishing transformation into Europe's first true multinational financial institution. The constant flow of pilgrims and crusaders between Europe and the Holy Land created a unique economic opportunity. Carrying large sums of money or valuable goods over vast distances was inherently risky, making travelers vulnerable to robbery. The Templars offered a revolutionary solution. They began to operate as a secure banking system. A pilgrim in Paris, for instance, could deposit a sum of money with a Templar preceptory there, receiving a letter of credit or a coded receipt. Upon arrival in the Holy Land, they could present this document at a Templar house in Acre or Jerusalem and withdraw an equivalent sum. minus a small commission. This system of letters of credit predated modern banking by centuries, virtually eliminating the risk of highway robbery and revolutionizing travel and commerce. This innovative banking system rapidly expanded. Templar preceptories, their administrative and financial centers, sprung up across Europe, from England to Portugal, France to Germany. Each preceptory managed the order's local assets, collected donations, and facilitated these financial transactions. They acquired vast tracts of land, not just through donations, but also through shrewd investments and agricultural ventures. They developed sophisticated accounting practices, managed extensive property portfolios, and even operated their own fleets of ships, ensuring the safe passage of both pilgrims and valuable cargo. Their financial services soon extended beyond pilgrims. Kings, nobles, and even the Pope himself became clients of the Templars. They acted as treasurers, holding royal funds, managing estates, and providing loans for crusading expeditions, or even for the construction of great cathedrals. King Louis IX of France, for example, entrusted the Templars with his entire royal treasury during his absence on crusade. King Henry III of England frequently borrowed from them, storing his crown jewels in the Temple Church in London, which became a de facto bank vault. The Templars' vast network of preceptories functioned as an integrated financial system, allowing for the swift and secure transfer of funds across the continent. They amassed immense wealth, not just in gold and silver, but in land, property, and influence. They became, in effect, a state within a state, operating with papal authority and possessing a financial infrastructure that rivaled and often surpassed that of many European monarchs. Their castles, like the Temple Church in London or the fortress of Tomar in Portugal, were not just military strongholds, but also centers of immense administrative and financial power. Within their thick walls, scribes meticulously recorded transactions, knights trained for battle, and the order's vast wealth was managed with a level of sophistication rarely seen in the medieval era. They controlled ports, ran farms, managed vineyards, and even engaged in manufacturing. By the end of the 12th century, the Knights Templar were at the zenith of their power. They were an indispensable force in the Crusader states, their military might crucial for defending the fragile Christian kingdoms. In Europe, they were an economic titan, the most powerful and trusted bankers of their age. Their wealth and influence intertwined with the very fabric of medieval society. They were admired for their piety, respected for their courage, and increasingly viewed with a mixture of awe and apprehension by the monarchs who relied on their services but grew weary of their unparalleled autonomy and formidable power. The seeds of their future downfall, ironically, were being sown even amidst the flourishing harvest of their success. The turn of the 13th century marked a significant shift in the fortunes of the Crusader states and, by extension, the Knights Templar. The initial fervor of the First Crusade had long since faded, replaced by a weariness both political and spiritual. While new crusades were continually preached, they rarely achieved the strategic successes of the earlier expeditions. The Muslim forces in the Levant, particularly under dynamic leaders like Saladin, had grown stronger, more unified, and increasingly determined to reclaim the territories lost decades earlier, the Templars, along with the other military orders like the Hospitallers, found themselves on the ever-shrinking front line of a protracted and increasingly desperate conflict. The Templars, true to their founding vows, continued to be at the forefront of nearly every major engagement in the Holy Land. Their white mantles and red crosses were synonymous with unwavering courage and fierce resistance. They fought with a tenacity that often defied logic, holding ground against overwhelming odds, a testament to their rigorous training and profound religious conviction. Yet even their legendary bravery could not stem the tide of a unified Islamic resurgence against a fragmented and often squabbling collection of Christian lords. A defining moment in this period of decline and a devastating blow to the Crusader cause was the Battle of Hattin in 1887. This catastrophic defeat, orchestrated by the brilliant Muslim general Saladin, marked a turning point from which the Crusader states would never fully recover. The combined armies of the Latin Kingdom, including a significant contingent of Templars and Hospitallers, were lured into a waterless plain near the horns of Hattin. Exhausted and parched, they were surrounded and systematically annihilated by Saladin's forces. The slaughter was immense. King Guy of Jerusalem was captured, and thousands of Christian soldiers were killed or enslaved. For the military orders, the loss was particularly severe. The master of the Templars, Gerard de Riedefort, was captured, and according to historical accounts, over 230 Templar knights were executed by Saladin after the battle, having refused to convert to Islam. The loss of so many experienced and dedicated fighting men was an irreplaceable blow to the order's strength in the east. Within months of Hattin, Jerusalem itself fell back into Muslim hands, a profound shock to Christendom, and a devastating spiritual defeat for the Templars, whose very name was tied to the Temple Mount. Despite this monumental setback, the Templars continued to fight with grim determination. They participated in the Third Crusade, which saw Richard the Lionheart's valiant but ultimately unsuccessful attempt to retake Jerusalem. The order was instrumental in key sieges and battles, including the Siege of Acre, where their military expertise was invaluable. However, the strategic landscape had irrevocably shifted. The dream of a permanent, dominant Christian presence in the Holy Land was slowly, inexorably fading. Throughout the 13th century, the Crusader states became little more than a collection of coastal strongholds, constantly under siege, their internal divisions weakening them further. The Templars, along with the Hospitallers, became the primary defenders of these last bastions. They poured their vast financial resources into maintaining garrisons, repairing fortifications, and recruiting new knights. Yet it was a losing battle against the superior numbers and unified command of the Mamluk Sultanate, who now dominated Egypt and Syria. The end came in 1291 with the fall of Acre, the last major Crusader stronghold in the Levant. This was the final devastating act in the long, drawn-out decline of the Crusader presence in the Holy Land. The siege of Acre was brutal, a desperate struggle for survival. The Templars, under their Grand Master Guillaume de Beaujeu, fought with legendary ferocity, leading heroic counterattacks and defending the city's walls against overwhelming odds. When the city's defenses finally collapsed, the remaining Templars made their last stand in their fortified compound within the city. They defended it to the last man, eventually retreating to a tower that also fell, burying many of them in its rubble. Guillaume de Beaujeu himself died in the fighting. The fall of Acre marked the definitive end of the Crusader states in the Levant. For the Knights Templar, it was an existential crisis. Their reason for being, their raison d'être, the protection of pilgrims and the defense of the Holy Land, had vanished. They were now a powerful, wealthy, and highly organized military order, without a clear, immediate purpose in the region where they were founded. With the loss of their strongholds in the east, the surviving Templars, including the new Grand Master Jacques de Molay, retreated to Cyprus. They were an order in diaspora, still immensely wealthy and powerful, but fundamentally displaced. The vast network of commanderies and preceptories across Europe remained intact, continuing their financial operations and land management. However, their ultimate mission had been stripped away. They were no longer the indispensable guardians of the Holy Sepulchre, but rather a wealthy, autonomous entity with a formidable military arm, now based far from the front lines they had so bravely defended for nearly 2 centuries. This shift in their geographical and strategic focus was crucial. While they maintained their wealth and organization in Europe, their image began to subtly change. No longer were they seen primarily as the heroic protectors of the faith, but as a powerful, secretive, and immensely rich organization whose true purpose was now ambiguous. Their autonomy, once a strength, began to be perceived as a threat by powerful monarchs who coveted their wealth and resented their independence. The very foundations that had brought them such immense power and influence would, in this new era of decline, ironically make them vulnerable. The stage was set for a new kind of battle, not on the dusty plains of the Holy Land, but in the political courts and dark corners of Europe, where their final, dramatic chapter would unfold. The fall of Acre in 1291 was a death knell for the Templars' original purpose, leaving them a powerful, wealthy, but fundamentally displaced organization. They retreated to Cyprus, still commanding vast resources and prestige, but their raison d'être was gone. This shift in their status from indispensable defenders of the Holy Land to an immensely rich, independent, and increasingly enigmatic entity in Europe made them acutely vulnerable. The envy and suspicion of powerful monarchs, particularly those burdened by debt, began to crystallize into active hostility. The primary architect of the Templars' downfall was King Philip IV of France, known as Philip the Fair. Philip was a ruler obsessed with consolidating royal power and, crucially, desperate for money. He had already taxed the church heavily and persecuted the Jewish community in France to seize their assets. By 1307, Philip's coffers were severely depleted, largely due to his costly wars with England and Flanders. He owed an enormous debt to the Knights Templar, who, with their vast financial network, had often acted as his royal bankers and lenders. This debt, combined with his desire to seize their immense wealth and eliminate a powerful, autonomous entity within his kingdom, made the Templars a prime target. The plan was meticulously orchestrated and executed with chilling precision. For years, rumors had circulated about the Templars, whispers of secret rituals, alleged idol worship, blasphemy, and even sodomy. These rumors, often vague and unsubstantiated, provided Philip with the perfect pretext. He dispatched secret orders to his royal offices across France to be opened simultaneously on a predetermined date. That date was Friday, October 13th, 1307. On that fateful Friday the 13th, at dawn across France, royal agents swept down upon Templar commanderies, arresting hundreds of knights. They were caught completely by surprise, having no time to hide their assets or prepare a defense. Among those arrested was the revered Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, an old warrior of immense integrity. The arrests were accompanied by a systematic seizure of all Templar property, lands, castles, treasury vaults, and financial records. It was an unprecedented act of royal tyranny, a swift and brutal appropriation of power and wealth. The Templars were immediately subjected to horrific torture by royal inquisitors, sleep deprivation, starvation, beatings, stretching on the rack, and the infamous estrapade, hanging by the wrists, dislocating shoulders, were routine. Under such unbearable duress, many knights, including Jacques de Molay himself, confessed to a litany of sensational charges, denying Christ, spitting on the cross, engaging in homosexual acts, worshipping a mysterious idol known as Baphomet, and other forms of heresy. These confessions, extracted under extreme duress, were exactly what Philip needed to justify his actions and to convince Pope Clement V, who was largely under Philip's influence and residing in Avignon, to suppress the order. Initially, Pope Clement V expressed shock and demanded that the Templars be tried under church law. However, Philip's relentless pressure, the widespread confessions that had been extracted, and the political reality of his dependence on the French king eventually forced the Pope's hand. In 1312, at the Council of Vienne, Clement V reluctantly issued the papal bull Vox in excelso, formally dissolving the order of the Knights Templar. The bull did not explicitly condemn the Templars for heresy, but dissolved them due to their bad reputation and the scandal they had caused, effectively conceding to Philip's demands. Their vast properties were ostensibly transferred to the rival order of the Hospitallers, though Philip and other monarchs managed to seize substantial portions for themselves. Despite the formal dissolution, the fate of the Templar leaders, especially Jacques de Molay, remained unresolved. After years of imprisonment and repeated interrogations, Grand Master de Molay, along with Geoffrey de Charny, the preceptor of Normandy, was brought before a public tribunal in Paris on March 18th, 1314. They were expected to reaffirm their earlier confessions and receive life imprisonment. However, to the astonishment of the assembled crowd and the fury of King Philip, both de Molay and de Charny dramatically recanted their confessions, declaring their innocence and proclaiming the Templars to be a righteous order. De Molay, in a powerful and defiant speech, declared, "I admit that I have deserved the direst fate by misleading myself and others to avert by a lie the torture and immediate danger. I say to the shame of those who so lightly condemn us that I am not guilty of the crimes imputed to me, that the order is innocent, and that I solemnly declare it in the presence of God and man." This public retraction sealed their fate. Enraged by this defiance, King Philip immediately condemned them as relapsed heretics. Without even consulting the Pope, he ordered them to be burned at the stake that very day. As the flames consumed them on the Île aux Juifs, Isle of the Jews, in the Seine River, a chilling legend was born. According to widespread accounts, Jacques de Molay, in his final agonizing moments, cried out a curse: Pope Clement, Knight Guillaume de Nogaret, King Philip, before a year is out, I will summon you before the tribunal of God. Cursed be you all to the 13th generation. Whether spoken or not, the curse proved eerily prescient. Pope Clement V died a month later, in April 1314, reportedly of dysentery. Guillaume de Nogaret, Philip's ruthless chief minister and the architect of the Templars' prosecution, had already died in 1313 under mysterious circumstances, and King Philip IV himself, the man who had orchestrated the entire destruction of the order, died in November 1314, less than 8 months after de Molay's execution in a hunting accident, reportedly from a cerebral hemorrhage or stroke. The sudden and sequential deaths of the 3 main perpetrators of the Templars' fall sent shivers through medieval Europe, cementing de Molay's curse in popular imagination and fueling the enduring mystique and conspiracy theories surrounding the Knights Templar. The order was gone, but its legend had just begun. The dramatic and brutal suppression of the Knights Templar, culminating in the fiery execution of their Grand Master, did not erase them from history. Instead, their sudden and mysterious disappearance, coupled with the convenient deaths of their persecutors, fueled a torrent of myths, legends, and conspiracy theories that have persisted for centuries, thriving in the shadows of history and exploding into popular culture in the modern age. The Templars, though officially dissolved, were about to achieve a kind of immortality through whispers and speculation. Perhaps the most enduring and captivating myth surrounding the Templars is that of their lost treasure. The order had amassed unimaginable wealth, vast hoards of gold, silver, jewels, and precious artifacts. When Philip IV launched his surprise arrests on Friday the 13th, 1307, many believe that not all of this immense treasure could have been seized. Legend holds that the Templars, warned of the impending crackdown, managed to hide their most valuable possessions. Tales speak of Templar ships, laden with gold and secret documents, slipping away from French ports under the cover of darkness, sailing to unknown destinations, perhaps Scotland, or even as far as the Americas. What exactly did this treasure consist of? The theories are tantalizing and far-reaching. Some believe it included mundane but valuable assets, while others claim it contained sacred relics of immense power and historical significance. The most famous of these is the Holy Grail, the cup from which Christ drank at the Last Supper, or the Ark of the Covenant, the golden chest believed to contain the tablets of the 10 Commandments. Other theories suggest the Templars possessed priceless ancient texts, perhaps even the true history of Christianity or profound esoteric knowledge passed down from antiquity. The idea of hidden vaults, forgotten tunnels, and secret caches filled with Templar riches continues to tantalize treasure hunters and historians alike, from the Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland to remote islands. Another powerful and widely debated connection links the Knights Templar to the origins of Freemasonry. Many Masonic traditions and rituals are said to echo those of the Templars. The emphasis on chivalry, secret knowledge, elaborate ceremonies, and a hierarchical structure bears a striking resemblance. Some Masonic lodges trace their lineage directly back to the Templars, claiming that surviving knights fled to Scotland or other safe havens after the order's suppression, where they continued their traditions in secret, eventually evolving into the modern Masonic fraternities. While direct historical proof remains elusive, the symbolic and thematic parallels are compelling, ensuring this theory remains a cornerstone of Templar lore. The Templar legacy has also been woven into the fabric of other esoteric and mystical traditions. Rosicrucianism, an alleged secret society with roots in the 17th century, is sometimes linked to Templar spiritual knowledge. Modern-day occult groups, New Age philosophies, and even proponents of ancient astronaut theories have incorporated elements of Templar mythology, seeing them as guardians of profound truths or connections to ancient civilizations. The secretive nature of the order, their rapid rise to power, and their equally swift demise provide fertile ground for any theory requiring a hidden hand or a lost wisdom. In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, the Knights Templar experienced a massive resurgence in popular culture. Books, films, and video games seized upon their mystique, transforming them from a historical curiosity into global icons of intrigue and adventure. Dan Brown's immensely popular novel, The Da Vinci Code, published in 2003, arguably did more than any other single work to catapult the Templars into mainstream consciousness. Brown's narrative, which posited the Templars as guardians of a secret lineage of Christ and the Holy Grail, ignited a worldwide fascination, blurring the lines between historical fact and fictional speculation. Video games like Assassin's Creed, while fantastical, feature the Templars as a powerful, shadowy organization vying for control of humanity's destiny. Television series, documentaries on history channels, and countless works of historical fiction and fantasy have continued to explore every facet of Templar lore. Their battles, their banking, their alleged heresies, and above all, their enduring secrets. Hollywood often portrays them as either noble protectors of sacred knowledge or sinister conspirators seeking global domination, further solidifying their dual image as both heroes and villains in the public imagination. This pervasive presence in popular culture has ensured that the Knights Templar are far from forgotten. Their story serves as a powerful reminder of how history, when cloaked in secrecy and injustice, can evolve into compelling myth. Whether one believes in their hidden treasure, their survival through Freemasonry, or their role in grand historical conspiracies, the Templars continue to fascinate. They represent the ultimate blend of faith, power, and mystery, a brotherhood whose tangible existence vanished from the historical stage, only to live on eternally in the realm of legend and unanswered questions. Their story, far from ending on that fateful pyre in 1314, simply transformed, becoming a cornerstone of enduring mystery and a testament to the power of human imagination. And so, we bring our long journey to a close. We have traced the arc of the Knights Templar from their humble beginnings as 9 devoted knights protecting pilgrims on dusty roads, to their astonishing rise as Europe's first multinational bankers and the formidable shock troops of the Crusades. We have witnessed their unwavering courage in battle, their innovative financial prowess, and their tragic, spectacular downfall engineered by a king's greed and fear. Were they heretics or heroes? Were they cynical bankers or holy warriors? Perhaps they were all of these, and none. They were complex men living in a complex, often brutal age. They embodied the highest ideals of medieval chivalry and faith. Yet their immense wealth and independence ultimately made them a target, caught in the dangerous cross-currents of papal authority and burgeoning royal power. As the embers of Jacques de Molay's pyre cooled on that fateful day in 1314, the tangible presence of the Templars vanished. Their lands were seized, their members dispersed, their name officially condemned. Yet the story of the Knights Templar did not truly end there. It simply transformed. From the ashes of their suppression, they rose into the realm of myth, conspiracy, and enduring fascination. They became the whispered secret in Masonic lodges, the subject of countless treasure hunts, and enigmatic figures at the heart of thrilling tales in popular culture. Their white mantle with a red cross, once a symbol of earthly power and spiritual dedication, became a timeless emblem of hidden knowledge and unsolved mysteries. The Templars remind us that history is not always neat and tidy, that truth can be stranger than fiction, and that the shadows of the past can cast long, intriguing shapes into the present. Their legacy is a testament to the enduring human desire to find patterns in the unknown, to uncover hidden truths, and to believe in something grander than ourselves. They live on in whispers, in shadows, and in dreams, a silent, powerful echo from a bygone age. As you drift now, ponder the Templars. Consider their dedication, their power, their fate. Let their story mingle with your thoughts, a tapestry of history, legend, and quiet intrigue. If you found peace in this journey through the forgotten corridors of history, consider subscribing for more tales lost to time, stories whispered in the quiet hours.